Hi, Kerry. How are you?
Good.
You all right? Nice to see you. Mrs Armstrong gets easily embarrassed, so we'll see what we can do. And look, I'll just tell you a few little things that you may not know about Mrs Armstrong, and that's that she's been actually in the surf life-saving movement since the age of 4 years of age, so that's a long time. And she's a trailblazer within the surf life-saving movement, and you've been with Umina Beach all that time. Why with Umina Beach?
I grew up in Umina, went to Umina High, was the local club. My dad was a patrolling member there, so it was just natural that as a family we just followed in his footsteps.
And you've been the youngest ever patrol captain. I think you were 19 when you became patrol captain.
Yep, yeah. Because I grew up there, I got really familiar with the surf conditions, and I guess early in those days there weren't many women, and sometimes they were short on numbers and all that sort of stuff. And so I just grew up knowing the surf, being able to read the surf, and their sort of qualities you need as a patrol captain. And yeah, so it ended up that I sort of came into the club captain role and was patrol captain. And tried to use those skills to teach others and to keep the community safe.
You say that you came in as a young age, but and you're a patrol captain, but you're actually a trailblazer in surf life-saving movement for women. Because even when you went into it and when you could get your bronze medallion, that's when you could become a patrol person.
Yep.
All right. But I guess what I'm thinking is women really weren't involved in the surf life-saving movement until 1980. The only time they were actually ever involved was during the Second World War, when the men had gone off to war and a few women were allowed to actually patrol the beaches.
That's correct, yeah. So women came in when I was in the under-13s as a nipper, and then so finished the nippers, did my bronze. And at that stage, just in the community, there was no women's cricket, there was no women's rugby union, there was no women's rugby league, there was no women's football. It just wasn't, women pretty much played netball, tennis, the typical sort of stereotypical women's sports. So coming into surf lifesaving, a similar thing happened. They sort of just brought through the events that they'd done in nippers, so there was sprints, swim and board, but they considered that flags were too dangerous for women to do, and that women weren't strong enough to paddle skis and row boats. So there was a sort of stage there where I think you do what you're passionate about and what you believe in, so I just thought we could do it. And so I just had to try and train hard and go in the men's races to show that we could do it, and then gradually it came into our branch, held women's races, and it was took 6 years before it was actually held at a state and national level. Well,
you're actually part of the state team in women's surf life saving that went to New Zealand. You were in that first women's team.
Yeah, and that was the catalyst for a lot of it, because when we went to New Zealand, they were far more progressive as far as equal opportunity for women at that stage. So as I mentioned, we only had 3 events for women. Over there, they already did all those events, and so we had to learn how to paddle a ski, row a boat before we went over to compete against them. And I thought it was rather silly us trying to be competitive in a situation where we just learnt those skills. So if we were going to continue to do international competition, we needed to be able to compete and practice it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing what you've done. And I know that, I think it was about 2 years ago, that you actually took part in a colour parade for all the pioneer surf life-saving women. What was that about?
I think that was just a time when they were celebrating
women in surf life-saving?
Yeah, from 1980, when it first got developed, so it was just an anniversary. And so they got a lot of the women that had played a key role in different areas, and I was fortunate to be invited to be in that.
So you are recognised as a trailblazer. And just going back to about 2000, I think Gemma was a baby. I think there might be a picture up here of Gemma as a little tiny tot, and you actually won your first Australian championship.
Yeah. So the Champion Lifesavers event I'm really passionate about as well. It sort of brings in all of the life-saving skills that you have. It sort of does a bit of physical racing. It does work on a mannequin, and you also get tested in a theory paper. So again, at the start, it was only held for men. So I used to go in and do it against the men.
Good on you. Well done.
Then they held the first women's event at the Australian Championships in the year 2000. Right. And so I was fortunate to get through from our state level to compete at Aussies, and I managed to have a win. So that was really special.
Yeah, you've had a few wins at Aussies, and I think you would have lost count of how many you've actually had, but I know there were a couple of big years, and certainly in 2012 you were Aussie champion, and then you went on to the World Championships, and I think in board you were actually the world champion in board, and is that correct?
Yeah, in 2012 it was ski.
Ski, sorry.
Yeah.
2013 I think may have been board.
Yeah, no, so it was a real special time, and it was nice sort of that it came around that it was the ski event that I ended up being world champion in, because that was the one that I'd started off with initially. So yeah, it was nice.
And then you went on and you were world champion in ski as well.
So
that's pretty awesome. And when I was doing some research about you, I know that you've actually been awarded the National Sports Medal for services to surf life saving, and also the National Service Medal for serving the community, which is really good. And that would be all your, I guess, community service as a patrol captain. And
yeah, I think it's really important that we all sort of give back. And for me, it's life-saving, but serving the community. And I think we should all try and do something in the community that we do to contribute without getting paid for it, just because it's the right thing to do. And for me, I've got a skill with the surf, so I think surf life saving is a natural area for me to do that. And I've just been there a long time, which sort of shows how old I am.
Well, I think it's amazing. I think a lot of the students out here would just admire what you've achieved in your life.
Thank you.
I mean, it's one thing to be your minor champion, but to be state champion, national champion and world champion, and on several times. And I think from about 2012, I think you've been the national champion in your age group right up to the present time.
In champion life saving.
Champion life saving, which is, that's like 10 years, to be at your peak. I don't know how it's possible, but congratulations.
Thank you.
And look, if you had to give the students and the staff, particularly me, who's not a very strong swimmer, some advice about the surf, what would it be?
You always want to make sure you don't go in on your own, because the surf's deceptive. Often where it's the flattest, calmest looking part, it's that reason because there's the deepest hole and that's where the rip is. So you get families come down the beach all the time and they go, oh, I'll put my little kids in here because it looks calm, and they're just about to put them straight into a rip. So go where the patrol flags are. Don't go in the surf alone. Make sure somebody knows where you are. And then if your friend gets in trouble, don't go and save them if you don't have the skills, because we usually end up with multiple people we're having to rescue. So get some help from someone who knows what they're doing.
Last time we were here interviewing, I think I was interviewing Lily, and I mentioned the fact that when students compete at various carnivals, whether it be swimming or athletics or whatever it may be, I've kind of got visions of many of them over the years. And one I had the other day, was talking to Lily about, was I had her pounding down the straight after she was doing a 200-metre sprint, which was just, she was flying, But another memory I have was actually at Woi Woi Pool, which was your youngest daughter, Bronte, and she was in middle school. She was in year 8 or 9, I can't remember quite which one, but I had visions she was in the Champion of Champions race. And back then, so most of you would be aware that most of the Champion of Champions come out of, probably years 11 and 12. But Bronte, was in year 8 or 9. And Gemma, your oldest daughter, she's a gun athlete, and we'll talk about her in a minute. And Bronte came from nowhere and actually won the Champion of Champions race, so she's an outstanding swimmer as well.
She hasn't let Gemma forget it, believe me.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't let Gemma forget either. Then on the other side, you've got Gemma, who recently travelled to Portugal, and then she's a kayaker now. And you actually see Gemma on TV, and when the Iron Women series are on TV, Surf Life Saving Iron Women. And but kayaking's her passion, and I think she's trying to progress further with that. Well, she went to Portugal, and when she got over there, she didn't know whether she'd compete in the under-23s or the Opens. And I think it was just the night before or on the day. What happened there?
Yeah, previously she'd been over to Worlds before COVID, so I think it was 2019, and you're allowed to compete as an under-23 and Open, so you're allowed to do both categories. And so on the entry form, you're allowed to enter into both categories, but the night before, they rang and said, no, they're only letting you enter one. You've got to make a decision between under-23s and Opens. And that was a really big decision because there was 2 current world champions in the opens race, and she was the previous from 2019 world champion in the under 23. So she was pretty confident that she could win the 23s, but the opens was a bit of an unknown. But I just said, you've got to back yourself, you've got to go for it. You've put in the hard work, give it a go.
Wow.
So it was really fortunate she ended up picking opens. So,
she won, yeah. And I saw footage of it, and there wasn't just like 5 people in the race.
No, there was over 100 in that race.
Yeah. So huge number.
Yeah.
And she powered at the end. She seemed to have the stamina.
Yes, yeah, she's very determined.
Very determined.
Yeah.
A bit like her mother.
A little bit.
Righto. Kerry, we might end that there. And I thought we might play 60 seconds with Benno. What do you think, guys? Will we have a game?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah? Righto. We're trying 60 seconds with Benno. We all know how this works. And we'll put Mrs Armstrong on the spot now, all right? So I'm going to ask you questions in quick succession. They'll come up on the screen. We should have the clock there. I think, Ben, we should be ready. Ben, let's start the clock, please. Go. What music do you listen to?
Anything that's upbeat.
What is your favourite holiday destination?
For me, all holidays is a good holiday.
What do you do to enjoy doing in your life?
Sport.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Give everything your best effort.
Who's your hero?
I've got heaps of heroes for all different sort of aspects of things, lots.
Do you consider yourself competitive?
Very.
If you could live anywhere, where would it be?
Anywhere near a beach that's warm.
What is your biggest fear?
Spiders.
Do you have any regrets?
No, I've made a fool of myself plenty of times and made plenty of mistakes, but I look at it as a learning opportunity, so I don't regret it.
And what's been your most embarrassing moment?
I was coming 4th in a race at Aussies in about a 6-foot surf, and I nosedived my ski in front of the whole beach.
What foreign language would you like to learn?
French.
What is your preferred family vacation?
Anywhere that's got a beach.
Great. Thank you so much, Mrs Armstrong.
Thank you.
Thank you.